Educational Communications and this station present Environmental Directions with Nancy Perlman. On this series, we explore the effects of human influence on the Earth's ecosystems and discuss solutions to environmental problems which affect the quality of life on this planet. Environmental Directions gives you the kind of information you need to help you participate in decisions impacting your community, the nation, and the world. Now, here's your host, Nancy Perlman.
Hello. We are going to be talking about local dolphins in Southern California and also how fires affect local marine environments with my guest, Dr. John Roberts. He is a member of the Board of Directors of the Oceanographic Teaching Stations, also known as the Roundhouse Aquarium in Manhattan Beach. He has been a professor of biology and environmental science at California State University, Dominguez Hills, and he has been a senior research fellow with the Kerckhoff Marine Lab with the California Institute of Technology. He has formerly been on the board of directors of the Southern California Academy of Science, and he's also a member of the Association of Zoos and Aquaria. Welcome. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
You are very involved in something called the Bottlenose Dolphin Project. What is that?
The Bottlenose Dolphin Project actually came about almost by accident. We have an employee there, Eric Martin, who is an aquarist, but he's also an excellent photographer and videographer. The board of directors of OTS has always been aware of how great his pictures are. We saw them as an underutilized resource, so we got together, put together a committee to try and figure out a way that we could use his videos and his pictures. Several goals we have for the use of these videos. Number one, for class curricula. We teach about 15,000 students per year from the LA area. Many come from Title I schools, and many have never been to the beach, even though they may live 5 or 10 miles away. So we want to reach out to them and get them involved in marine science. The second thing is we wanted to have public lectures on dolphins and other marine science topics to encourage people to be better stewards of the ocean, local beaches, and so on. And along with that, we have about 300,000 visits to the aquarium per year. So we want to reach out to those people as well. And the final thing, and this is something that I really feel strongly about, I'm a volunteer with the Ocean Conservation Society Be Aware program. This is put together because there is the Marine Mammal Protection Act of 1972 tries to protect marine mammals, whales, dolphins, seals, sea lions, and so on. And they have guidelines. NOAA has put out guidelines for the responsible way of interacting and observing marine mammals. I'm involved with that. We have brochures at the aquarium, responsible interaction with observation of marine mammals, I guess. We really don't want to interact with them too much.
We know that there are a few hundred species of dolphins worldwide. How many do we find off the coast of Los Angeles and Southern California?
Counting on my fingers, I would say there probably are at least 6 that we find sometimes. The ones that we focus on are the bottlenose dolphins, and specifically the coastal populations that live in the Santa Monica Bay.
What other species are there?
There are common dolphins, there are white-side dolphins. Actually, there are really 2 populations of bottlenose dolphins. There's the coastal, which we're most interested in, but there's also an offshore population, and they're a bit different. They have different behavior, and anatomically they're a little bit different, even though they're classified as the same species.
Do they live here year-round?
We see them year-round, although it does tend to vary with the seasons.
Dolphins are here off of our coastline in Southern California, but how many other species can we also find?
In terms of whales, off and on, I think there are 7 different species of whales.
How many species of fish and other crustaceans?
Fish, there are thousands of species, and invertebrates, thousands of species as well.
Dolphins are endangered. Is there any place in the world where they are protected and have enlarged their numbers and gotten back to a decent carrying capacity?
For reasons that I don't think are that well understood, the dolphin population in Southern California is larger than it used to be. All of the marine mammals are protected in the United States by the Marine Mammal Protection Act. So, yeah, they're protected here. Other places, maybe not so much. I think there are other places where people still kill them for food, Japan, for example. So, yeah, it varies depending on what country you're in.
We certainly have to pay better attention to what wonderful resources we have out there and work to conserve and protect them.
Yes.
Every time I've gone out on whale watching trips here in our Pacific Ocean, I don't always see whales, but I almost always see dolphins.
Yes.
Do they travel in family pods?
They do. Actually, their family structure and their family behavior is quite interesting. Eric Martin, who does all the photography, is really the authority on their behavior. So I hope you can get him to do an interview.
More than welcome.
They do live in family groups. It's called a fission fusion type of society where they come together in a big group and then they split apart. Their behavior is really quite interesting. The calves stay with their moms for a couple of years. Very cohesive family structures. Very interesting behavior.
Those who have researched whales take pictures of them and have books identifying each individual by their tails, by other features. Is that the same with dolphins, that you can tell individuals?
Yes, you can. The complication is that there's so many dolphins around of the same species that you have to have a big catalog. It's the fin on the top and the flukes in the back. They have different patterns on there. Eric has done that to some degree. I don't think he can identify all of the local dolphins that he sees, but he has some data on that.
Unfortunately, dolphins have been in marine parks that are open to the public for entertainment, and yet conservationists oppose having these intelligent creatures in those kind of captive situations. Has anything been learned from those captive dolphins, or should they all be released back into the wild?
Historically, there's been a lot of information derived from those captive dolphins, the mechanisms for echolocation, for example, and some of the physiology, the diving physiology, some of their brain activity. So yes, there has been information learned from those dolphins that are in captivity. On the other hand, I think most scientists, most wildlife biologists think it's really a shame that we keep these wonderful animals, intelligent animals, in captivity, especially the ones that are kept completely in captivity and just confined to a small pool. I think in the future that will not be encouraged anymore. I think that won't happen.
Confinement is like being put in a solitary cell if you were a human being, because these animals do travel miles in the ocean. They need the space.
Yes, exactly. It's like being in prison.
How far do they travel?
The population that we're looking at, I've seen some reports that they travel as far as the San Francisco Bay region and down into Baja California. I don't know the extent of their range. I just know that they have been seen in Monterey Bay, for example, in that area. So they do travel quite a bit.
What are they eating in the wild?
They eat small fish. They eat octopuses, pretty much anything they can get their hands on. They're definitely carnivores. They eat other animals.
Are they considered a keystone predator?
I would say yes, they are among the keystone predators, yes. Especially the orcas are a type of dolphin as well. They are really definitely keystone predators.
Orcas I think of as whales. Now I know that dolphins and whales are in the scientific category of cetacea. Where is the breakdown?
The breakdown really has to do with their tooth structure. The toothed whales, or Odontocetes, actually have teeth, and the other whales, the Myricetes, have baleen. So it's the toothed whales and the baleen whales. I'm sorry, orcas are toothed whales. The toothed whales include dolphins, which includes the orcas, but it also includes the sperm whale.
What's the general size of a dolphin?
In terms of weight, several hundred pounds. They're actually quite large, maybe up to 1,000. And it depends on the species. Some are smaller and some are larger, maybe 10 feet long, depending on the species again.
Are they always gray?
Their colors are pretty muted. Yeah, they're gray, white, black. They're not technicolor. They're definitely on the black and white color scale.
How deep can they dive?
Again, I don't know that, but I think they can dive fairly deeply. I think the sperm whales are very deep divers. The local dolphins that we have here live in fairly shallow water, the coastal bottlenose dolphins. The offshore probably do dive deeper.
Is it okay for humans to go in the ocean and swim around with the dolphin? Are the dolphins safe? Are the humans safe?
As far as safety, yeah, I think it's safe. I don't know of any reports of a dolphin attacking a person, biting a person, or anything like that. It really brings up a quandary, I think, that a lot of people have with the Be Whale Aware and the Marine Mammal Protection Act, because you can be out swimming or surfing and the dolphins will come up to you. So the guidelines there are, if a dolphin approaches you, you're not supposed to touch it, you're not supposed to harass it in any way. If you're in a boat and you're following a whale, for example, there are guidelines for how close you can approach and what direction you're supposed to approach the whale from. But with free-swimming dolphin, if they come up to say hello to you, they're curious and they're probably just trying to figure out who you are, trying to figure out why you can't swim as well as them.
It's important that the whale watching trips maintain their distance from the whales so the whales can carry on with their normal activity. And it was a problem for a long time in their birthing environments because the sightseers got too close and they weren't able to do their normal behavior. It's the same kind of problem on land in in the wildlife safaris in Africa, where the safari companies would take them too close to the lion herds, and then the lions couldn't go out and kill and carry on their normal behavior. So it is important to know how to behave when you encounter wildlife.
Yeah, I think that's true all over the world in every environment. I have a son that lives in Montana, and people go to Yellowstone and they feed the bears. They want to interact with the bears and the moose and the elk. Once the animals become accustomed to humans around them, they lose their fear and they can become dangerous. So, yeah, I think people need to respect the wildlife. That's one of our missions, is to get people to feel that way about marine mammals.
Let the professional photographers do the photos and keep your distance when you're trying to take that selfie.
Right. No selfies. Take your binoculars from a distance. Our goal is just to make people appreciate the beauty of these animals and try their best to help preserve them and take care of their environment.
It's interesting, the myths or the stories of dolphins, some of them actually for real, that have helped save human beings.
Yes, I've heard those stories. I can believe them.
The dolphins seem to have a sense of somebody in danger and do try and help. Some of the people have fallen overboard or had other accidents in the waters.
Yes.
I know that when I went down into the Amazon and worked with a woman who was studying the Pink River dolphin, that they were very threatened by fishermen, and the fishermen were putting out nets that the dolphins were caught in and consequently died. Do we have a problem with fishing here in Southern California and the nets affecting the dolphins?
All around the world, there's a problem with entanglement with fishing gear. Whales and dolphins and so on become entangled in the fishing gear, and being mammals, they have to breathe, and if they're held underwater long enough, they'll die.
What kind of actions should individuals take to make sure that our coastal environments are protected and saved for the wildlife?
Well, I think one of the most important things that people can do, that's one of the easiest, is just make sure you don't throw your trash out so it'll end up in the ocean. Trash is bad, but it's much worse when it goes into the ocean. It's much better in a landfill. When you're on the beach and you're having a soda, don't throw the bottle on the beach or the can. Take it and put it in the trash can. Plastic is a special problem, so make sure you dispose of your plastic correctly. And one of the problems that we've been having is mylar balloons. People will have mylar balloons, which is nice. They're festive to have for a birthday party or something like that. But then they'll release them, and they tend to go out over the ocean, fall down into the ocean, and sometimes the marine life thinks it's something to eat. It can break down into microparticles, microplastic particles, which are harmful. So don't release the balloons. Put them in the trash. Just be careful what you dump into the storm drains. The storm drains go into the ocean, so don't put oil or toxic materials or paint or anything like that down the storm drains. Those are things that an individual can do.
Those are important suggestions for people to know that their individual action can make a difference, and I hope that people will do the right thing. We do have numerous agencies that are supposed to protect our wildlife, and we have the California Coastal Commission, we have the Department of Fish and Game. Are they doing anything special for our ocean life here?
I think they all are. I hope they will be able to continue. We interact with the Department of Fish and Game fairly often concerning the welfare of our specimens, our fish, and so on. We have a collector's permit so that everything that we collect is permitted.
I recall as a child, before we knew better as environmentalists, we'd go to the tide pools, we'd take an animal from the tide pool, bring it home, watch it for a few days, and unfortunately it would die because it wasn't properly taken care of. And they shouldn't be collected and put into home aquariums. We don't allow that anymore, do we?
I have seen people do that. If there's a law against it, I don't think it's enforced. It's part of the problem. There are laws, for example, the Marine Mammal Protection Act is enforced, but not always. There needs to be a change in attitude that people have so that if you want to enjoy wildlife, observe it on site and leave it there. Don't take it home.
There's so much more I want to talk about and learn about your work with the dolphins and how we can enjoy wildlife and protect them at the same time. And we will talk more with Dr. John Roberts with the Roundhouse Aquarium when we return in a moment.
Environmental Directions with Nancy Perlman continues with further discussion of the world's critical ecological issues. For more information, you may call 310-559-9160 or go to www.ecoprojects.org. Now, Here's Nancy.
I'm speaking with Dr. John Roberts, who is a member of the Board of Directors of the Oceanographic Teaching Stations. I rather like your abbreviation of Roundhouse Aquarium. What's the difference?
Oceanographic Teaching Stations was established about 40 years ago, and the goal of OTS when it was established was to convert the Roundhouse building, which was a pavilion, and it was really in disrepair. It was messy, and teenage hoodlums would hang out there and so on. So they got the city to agree to let them establish an aquarium for teaching purposes there, and that's the Roundhouse Aquarium.
And this is in Manhattan Beach?
Yes, it is. It's on the Manhattan Beach Pier at the very end.
But you don't have captive dolphins. You have a lot of other animals there.
Right. We would not have that in any case. We don't have that big a tank anyway.
What is safe to show that doesn't harm the animals and let people learn more about seeing wild animals, not in their natural environment, but being able to learn about them in an aquarium setting?
Well, we try and make the environments as natural as possible. We have a lot of invertebrates. We have a touch tank tide pool. Usually there's a volunteer there to point out things to the visitors and let people touch some of the animals. Then we have some larger tanks. Off and on we have several species of shark. We have several species of bass. We have some moray eels, some wolf eels. Now we have 2 octopuses. Yeah, we try and keep the environment as natural as possible.
Do you ever have to take in injured and sick wildlife and bring them back to health? I know that there are some groups that do that in Orange County.
Not really. Generally, when we collect animals for our exhibits, we try and get healthy ones and not bring in sick ones because we're afraid that if we bring in one that's sick, it will contaminate some of the others and jeopardize their health. So we have a consulting veterinarian who will come in and look if we have problems with our animals. And we have one tank where we can isolate sick animals, but we don't generally bring animals in from outside the aquarium. It's just for the ones that are there that get injured or get sick.
I want to know more about how fires, because we've had big fires in Malibu, Pacific Palisades, Pacific Coast Highway, in Los Angeles, as well as near our mountains. But how do fires affect the marine environment? Because fires, of course, are on land. We don't see fires in the ocean, but there must be some sort of residual runoff that affects the marine life?
There's runoff, but there's also the smoke plume. And from Manhattan Beach, you could see the smoke from the Palisades fire moving out over the ocean. There's a problem with the smoke and the particles in the smoke, and then we were lucky or unlucky, I guess, I don't know, to have rain right after that. So it washed a lot of the material down into the ocean as well.
We do know that the burned homes and businesses have a lot of toxics, and the rains might have washed some of those toxic elements into the creeks, rivers, and wetlands.
Yes, I think a lot of people are worried about that. Yeah, I think there's a difference between typical wildland fires, where it's just biomass, trees and bushes and so on burning, and then the wildland urban interface fires, where houses and cars and so on burn. Those fires produce a lot of damaging material. They produce toxic and carcinogenic products, including, I could give you a list, volatile organic compounds, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, polychlorinated biphenyls, toxic heavy metals, lead, asbestos, all those horrible things. Those products have been identified studying firefighters in urban fires and in vehicle fires, and they find high concentrations of those in the firefighters. And also, if you think back, some of the 911 first responders suffered harmful effects from those chemicals that were present in the burning refuse of those fires. They're bad things. Bad compounds are produced, especially for ones where houses and cars and other buildings are burned.
What about some of the other toxics that enter the ocean? I recall when I was training for the Ironman triathlon, swimming out in the ocean, swam out a mile from the beach and ended up at the end of a sewage outfall. It wasn't too pleasant.
Yes, we have that too. Yeah, the Hyperion sewage treatment plant. Now I think their farthest outfall is 2 miles, something like that. There's always a problem with that. At one time I did a project to monitor the bacterial contamination in a different location, and it really is there.
But we have the technology to treat our sewage, and we shouldn't be putting raw sewage out into the oceans because I'm sure it is affecting the marine life, whether or not it's the fish or the dolphins.
No place that I know of in California is intentionally releasing raw sewage. It's all treated to one degree or another. People that I know who have lived in South Bay for many, many years, and I kind of anecdotally know a bit about this. 40 years ago, the bay was pretty dirty, and now it's cleaner, and there are more fish, and you see more wildlife here. So it's been cleaned up.
But we still have a ways to go.
I think we still have a ways to go, but we're making progress in that regard. Some of the other things, you know the story about DDT contamination off Palos Verdes.
Still?
Still.
Because that was a major issue back at the first Earth Day in 1970, where the pelicans were suffering. The eggs wouldn't hold until birth because of DDT.
That's right. Well, it's still there.
It stays a long time.
It's one of those forever chemicals, and there also are chemicals like that are released in these urban fires. All fires produce a lot of ash, and very small ash particles, 2.5 microns or smaller, are dangerous because you breathe them in, they get into your blood, and then they migrate to organs and cause damage to your organs. So no matter what the fire is, there's a problem with these small ash particles.
We would be seeing the animals, other than humans, being affected by that.
Yes.
I'm wondering, too, is how does the ocean life in our bays, like the dolphins and the fish, are affected by the loss of beaches, which are not getting replenished because upstream on rivers we've stopped the natural flow of sand and other nutrients down to the oceans. And then, of course, sadly, California, and especially here in Southern California, has lost most of their wetlands, which are basically nurseries for the ocean life. These wetlands are so few and far between. Are we going to be able to reestablish some wetlands in any way whatsoever? And how is the marine life currently being affected by the loss of wetlands?
There have been some efforts to restore wetlands at different places along the coast. Iona Creek, for example, there's discussion about how to best restore that wetlands. And I know there are a couple down in San Diego where they've tried to restore the wetlands into as natural an environment as possible. There are people that are trying to do that. I agree with you about the loss of wetlands. I think it's really a shame.
What more do we need to do to understand and protect the dolphins and the other marine life here in Southern California?
As sad as it may be, these fires are probably a good opportunity to do research in the effects of fires on marine animals. Some people say that dolphins are like the canary in the coal mine. They're very susceptible, I think, to the effects of wildfires because of their anatomy and physiology. When they inhale and exhale, they take in a large volume of air so that they're being exposed to a lot of the air if it has ashes or something like that in it. And they lack sinuses and nasal structures that land animals have, so they can't trap the particles in mucus and sneeze or cough them out. So they're very susceptible to this kind of thing. I think more studies on a lot of different organisms will help clarify that. I don't know what possible things we could do to mitigate the effects of fires.
We certainly have to learn how to protect our wildlands, be it on land or in the oceans, and how to live better with fires. Climate change is making a dramatic difference in terms of having an increase in fires. Are you discovering that the change in temperature is making a difference in the ocean life?
We've seen, to a kind of a small degree but significant degree, is what's called range extension. A lot of animals where their range is determined by water temperature. And as the water temperature warms up, they can move further and further, for example, in the west coast of California, further and further north. So we see range extension in some animals where they're moving into a different environment than what they were used to living in, and sometimes they're competing with the endemic animals. It does tend to upset things a little bit.
How are the dolphins interacting with reintroduced species like the sea otter, which were practically killed to extinction and have had some reintroduced here in Southern California from the Monterey Bay area? Do these animals interact in any way?
I don't have an answer for that. I haven't seen any sea otters down here. I know that they're, as far as Big Sur and north, you see them. I haven't seen any down here, so I don't know whether the dolphins would interact with them or not.
How do the dolphins interact with the other life in the oceans? Do they need the kelp forests because they were disappearing and we're trying to get them restored?
Yeah, I'd say definitely indirectly because a lot of fish live in the kelp forests and the dolphins feed on those fish. As far as interaction with other animals, there are reports of dolphins cooperating with other species of dolphins. In other words, the bottlenose dolphin will interact with another species of dolphin and do cooperative feeding. So they would herd the fish into a ball and then cooperatively go in and snatch the fish to eat. They do interact with other species.
It's so great to know more about our fellow creatures on this planet. You have done a lot of teaching and research. I'm kind of curious what the Kerckhoff Marine Lab at the California Institute of Technology does, because we think of Caltech as more high-tech for other purposes resources like the Jet Propulsion Lab and sending out satellites.
Yeah, well, when I was there, it was quite a number of years ago. I worked there until 1985. When I was there were two main research groups going on there. There was one that was headed by a man named Wheeler North, and he was studying kelp forests. One of his proposals was that it might be possible to, in effect, sort of farm the kelp and increase the standing biomass of kelp. The other group, the one that I worked with, we were studying sea urchins, and we were looking at the early embryonic development and the effect of evolution on the early embryonic development. Sea urchins are good to work with because they have very large eggs, and you can get millions and millions of eggs. You can fertilize them in the test tube and then study what happens.
We'll have to learn more about all these other kinds of research projects later, but I'm also curious to know how your students, when you were a professor of biology and environmental science at California State University, Dominguez Hills, responded to your kind of work in trying to understand and protect dolphins. Did they show a particular interest in individual species, and are we finding all those young people taking on a species to protect and preserve?
I tried to get that message out to them. What I taught mostly about whales and dolphins was from the point of view of evolution and the way that whales and dolphins have an ancestor that was terrestrial, lived on land, and then it migrated into the ocean and adapted to life in the ocean. So I would tell them about all the adaptations that they had in order to allow them to live in the ocean. They were always surprised to find out that the closest land relative of the whales and dolphins is the hippopotamus.
It's a great point to bring out that there is a relationship in the evolutionary tree between land animals and marine animals, and the fact that they went into the oceans, they don't have wars, they get along, they have a brain, and I think our real problem is that we haven't learned to talk whale or dolphin to be able to understand what they're trying to tell us.
I think that's a good point. Yes, their brains are very interesting. One of the things that they're able to do is when they sleep, they have what's called unihemispheric slow-wave sleep, so that one hemisphere of their brain sleeps while the other remains awake, and then it switches. They can control their breathing while they're sleeping with half of their brain, and they can keep an eye out for predators with half of their brain while they're sleeping.
That is definitely fascinating. We know, sadly, that whales are very endangered, every species of whale, and unfortunately, there is still an industry to kill whales for their meat. There's still an industry to kill dolphins for their meat. Does the international community have the necessary laws to prevent this kind of killing of our cetacea?
I don't think there is an international law that would prevent it. Probably the best place to work would be within a country. There's such a big cultural barrier to making changes like that. It's kind of discouraging in a way.
It's certainly a battle that must continue to protect these animals. What do you hope to find out in your bottlenose dolphin project in the next few years?
We're primarily a teaching institution, so we don't do research. One thing I've become quite interested in is how intelligent are dolphins and how do you measure that intelligence? I hope we have a much better feeling for the intelligence of these animals.
It's wonderful that you're carrying on this project. It's great that you have restored an historic building in Manhattan Beach and allowed the public to come. How do they find out more about the Roundhouse Aquarium?
They can look on our webpage, search for the roundhouseaquarium.org.
And if one can get down there in person?
Open every day. During the week, we teach classes in the morning, so we're open, especially in the summer, 2 p.m. to 7 p.m., and on the weekends, we're open 10 to 5, and then when it gets to be spring, we open until 7.
Thank you so very much for letting us know about the dolphins in our community and what resources are out there. Thank you for being my guest.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for having me, and I encourage everybody to come down and pay us a visit at the Roundhouse Aquarium.
It's worth a visit. I have been speaking with Dr. John Roberts, who is a member of the Board of Directors of the Oceanographic Teaching Stations, or Roundhouse Aquarium. I'm Nancy Perlman. Thank you very much for joining us, and do tune in again next week.
If you would like free information about these environmental issues, go to www.ecoprojects.org or call 310-559-9160. Environmental Directions with your host, Nancy Perlman, is a community affairs program of the nonprofit organization Educational Communications and this station.